SJ Kids.
Hi, Miss Carmelia here again to talk to you about a children's message this week. If you notice, I'm outside, so that means you're probably going to like the ending of this video. Okay, so we've been talking about Easter, how Jesus came, how he sacrificed himself, how he rose from the dead, and how he was so humble that he put everybody else first, even above his own life, so that we could have a relationship. So after these events started to transpire on the third day, and the women had come back and told the disciples, and Peter had run to the grave to tell them that it was, and saw that it was empty himself, and they're going, what's going on? So two men that were in the group decided they had to go to Emmaus that day. So they start walking. It's a long way. It's like 7 miles, 4 or 5 hours at least. So they start walking, and they're talking and saying, how can this be? I just don't understand. You see, they were in a fog, kind of. Yeah, they were in a fog. And then, as they're walking along, another man starts to walk up to them and joins their little group and says, hey, what are you guys talking about? And they look at him and go, what? You don't know? Have you not been to Jerusalem? Do you not know the things that have been happening? And it was actually Jesus. And he just kind of wanted to know what they thought. So he didn't let them know that it was him. So he goes, no, what's going on? So they tell him all about Jesus coming into Jerusalem, riding a donkey like a king. And everybody thought he was going to save the people of Israel. And then how he was turned over by the religious leaders and crucified and died. And they were still in a fog. They didn't understand. So they were continuing on, and Jesus asked them again, well, what do you think? He said, well, today there were women that came back and said that the grave was empty. And then Peter went and checked it out, and it was empty too. And we don't know what's going on. They were still in a fog. But Jesus went ahead and told him something very important. He said, now, don't you realize that all of this is a part of God's big story, his big plan? Don't you know that everything that happened to the Messiah was foretold, told about before it happened in the Bible? I know you guys have been studying this since you were little. Surely you know. And that gave them great pause. They thought about it, and they kept walking, but still, they were in a fog. So, they decided they were going to stop for dinner that night. And while they stopped for dinner, they asked Jesus if he would join them. They didn't know his name, but they invited him to stay and join them for dinner. So Jesus said he would. So then he took the bread, and he gave thanks to God, and then he broke the bread. And just then, the fog cleared, and they knew it was Jesus. And just like that, Jesus disappeared. And they're going, oh my gosh, that had to be Jesus. That was Jesus. I recognize it now. And he told us such great things. He told us that it was his plan all along. It told us that God has a great, bigger story than what we can possibly imagine. So the disciples, they go running back to Jerusalem to tell the other disciples, you're not going to believe who we ran into. It's true. Jesus rose from the dead. We saw him. He walked with us. We know it was him. And at that moment, all the others started to think, wow, maybe there is a bigger story than what we thought. Maybe it doesn't have just to do with us, the small number of followers right here in Jerusalem. Maybe this is the big story that God had in mind to let everybody have an opportunity to have a relationship with God. So those two men that were on the road to Emmaus, we're going to say they're right here. See these little guys? See, we got little guys. Yeah. And when they went back and told everybody in Jerusalem that Jesus really had risen from the dead, that they talked to him, he's alive physically, they started something that became huge, just like these two little guys are going to do. When these two guys went and told the rest of the disciples that they had seen Jesus, they started a movement that could never, ever be stopped. Went from a little bitty, tiny people knowing about Jesus and what he did to a full-time God's big story that would forever and ever change all of us. God had a much bigger story in mind.